Hello and welcome to Design Practice 2 Articulate. This is an online lecture where I'll give you a bit of feedback on the site and user studies that were completed out of class in week 2. The idea of these online reflections are that you'll be able to refer to these throughout the semester as your ideas progress and as the course progresses. So first of all, just a quick note to refer you to Moodle and your week 2 reflection. So if you completed this reflection on both your site and user research, you're able to access the reflections of everyone in your year. And so the idea of this really is to create a bank of ideas where you can share thoughts and collaborate. So if you're stuck at any point, I'd advise you to maybe come back to this page. So a bit of feedback on the site studies. First of all, very well done. There were some very insightful kind of detail studies and some beautifully crafted drawings. So I really appreciate you putting the time and the effort into this task. The idea of this task really is that you're able to analyse the site in its physical form and in a very fine detail as a means of thinking about how you might then respond to those details, respond to the geometries, the patterns, the shapes and the forms that you've seen when you're creating your design proposals. Responding doesn't necessarily mean copying, well, it doesn't mean copying. More so it means responding sensitively to something that you found. So that might mean that you take the shape or the pattern of an archway or the shape of a brick and you look at interpreting it in your scheme in some way. Or it might mean that you look at some of the details that you find and you do something that really contrasts to those. So there are a number of ways that you can respond to the site, and it's your task in this project to kind of test and experiment with those, and our role to give you feedback on how you're going with that. Just a quick note, if we have a look at the drawings that are up here, that a range of responses are really fine for this task. So we had some students that looked in very kind of distilled line drawing details. So if we have a look at the top examples, the two top examples, we can see really simplified detail studies that look at the basic formwork and shapes that are found in the site, largely centered around the bricks and the connection between the bricks and other elements. If we have a look down on the left, I think this is Kira's drawing, she's taken a more abstract approach, and this is also totally fine. So these drawings are less about one type of material or object connecting to another and more just about the relationship between forms. If we have a look at the fourth example, who I think is Dana down here, she's really looked at very realistic sketches in the centre and then at abstracting those to the top and to the bottom into lines and shapes. So again, part of this course is you finding your voice and your way of kind of interpreting each of the tasks. And it's nice to see some of this emerging here, both from a design and a visual communications perspective. And I think the same can be said of the user studies if we have a look at these now. So with the user studies, it was really interesting to see the way that you guys approached this. If we have a look at the first example, we've got really fine detail about the space, the objects in the space, and the people in the space, so the users. And the notes were great to read. So sorry, I don't know who this person was, but the notes indicated descriptions of the space that might lead to design ideas. So in one it says that the living area and the eating area are the most commonly used parts of Ushio and Noriko's house, and that these areas are really filled with books, with accessories, with teapots, with objects. And so that's a really important observation to consider when you start proposing ideas for the micro apartment. If we have a look across here then at Chris's on the right, we can see a much more simplified and distilled approach to the visual communication, but again picking up on very important details and extrapolating information through this process that will hopefully be a way of guiding design decisions when the proposals begin. So we see an outdoor area with a lounge chair, and that makes you start to think, okay, well, if you're going to design a lounge chair, what do you need to capture in that space? How will that chair work? How will that outdoor area work? What would they do in the outdoor space? And then we go on. So we see utensils hanging on the wall. Again, what do you do with all of this stuff that they have? Do you hide it away? Do you expose it? Does it need to be very easily accessible? Does it become the kind of decor of the space? The cat. It's not a part of the brief, but is there a place for the cat to lounge, to sleep when you design your micro apartment? The example on the bottom left then looks at light and shade is the way that I interpreted it. And I think this is a really important one in analysing the apartment. So Ushio and Noriko's apartment is not awash with natural light. It really is very varied in terms of its tonal contrast. So think about that when you're proposing your space. And then the final example looks at a much more abstract approach to the visual communication. So I find this harder to interpret, and that's not a criticism. I guess the important thing to remember is that this is partly about finding your voice in terms of visual communication, and also about analysing the space in a way that's useful for you. So all of these kind of observations and studies of both site and user should be a means of generating design ideas. And design ideas really should be a way of kind of leading you to spatial decisions. I think concepts are really only helpful when they help guide you through making decisions about your space. So thank you again for all of the work this week. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of keeping your process work. So I thought this was a nice example of just quickly mocking up what's going to be drawn before then doing the final drawing. Thank you.